Child murders are some of the worst cases I ever cover. I started this channel wanting to cover the worst people on the planet, and that's why I began the first season with the theme of filicide. I thought that parents killing their own children would be at the top of that list, and I think I was right. A child being murdered is awful, but to have them be killed by the person that's supposed to be taking care of them is such a betrayal that I find myself disgusted by them the most. Of course, in the years I've been doing this, I've covered cases where children have been murdered by people other than a parent. It always ends up a heavy theme, and I'm at the end of this round of child murders, but I had a few cases that were light on details, and I want to go over them just as a final farewell to Season 24. So here's a little list where I cover 5 child killers. At 3:30 p.m. on December 8, 2020, emergency services were alerted to a residential fire in Williamsburg, West Virginia. When they arrived, they found the house was fully engulfed and they began working right away to get the blaze under control. It wasn't until about 30 minutes after they had arrived that a body was found at a picnic table on the south side of the property. The victim was dead from a gunshot wound to her head, and there was a shotgun laying by her body. Officers on the scene began searching the property, and in a broken-down vehicle they found 3 handwritten letters. One of the letters was titled Confession, and it read, quote, "I had shot all the boys in the head. I had set house on fire. I had shot myself in the head. I'm sorry mental health is serious. I hope one day someone will help others like me. Mental health is not to joke about or take lightly. When someone begs, pleads, cries out for help, please help them. You might just save a life or more lives. Thank you, OAM." The body was identified as Oriana Meyers, and after 4 days of searching what was left of the house, the remains of 5 children were located. 3 of the children were Oriana's. They were 4-year-old Kian Meyers, 3-year-old Eric Myers, and 1-year-old Jerikai Myers. 2 of the children were her husbands from a previous relationship. They were 7-year-old Sean Bumgarner and 6-year-old Riley Bumgarner. Her husband, Brian Bumgarner, had been away from the house because he had been in a recent car accident and was staying with a friend so he could get a ride to work. There had been a history of abuse from both Brian and Oriana prior to the murder-suicide, and the children had been removed from their care in 2016 due to neglect. Other signs that Oriana was suffering were found in text messages sent from her to Brian just days before the incident. Some read, quote, "You'll have nothing to come back to but to corpse. No one cares, why should I? Money will come and go. Once I go, there's no replacing me. I beg and cry for help, but never get it. It's my mental health that needs tending to. Help me. I do not care anymore." The investigation concluded, finding that Oriana Meyers had committed 5 homicides before turning the gun on herself. It's sad when mental health issues go untreated and cause deadly consequences, but it's even worse when the death is caused by straight-up selfishness. Robert Buskey was an amateur MMA fighter from Schenectady, New York, who liked to spend his free time playing video games. The problem was that Robert had a couple of kids who would get in the way of his precious video game time. So like the monster he turned out to be, he locked them up in various ways so he didn't have to deal with them. Not only was he not allowing them any freedom, for his 5-year-old daughter Charlotte at least, he also wasn't feeding her. When authorities arrived on the scene of a call of an unresponsive child on April 14, 2024, the little girl was pronounced dead. The autopsy revealed that she had died of starvation and dehydration. While on the scene, police also found Robert's 3-year-old son locked in a makeshift cage. Neither child had left the home for months. Charlotte had been locked in a bedroom with no food or water and only a pack-and-play portable crib to sleep in. It was so small that she was only able to fit in it curled up in the fetal position. Both children also had drugs in their system. Robert Buskey ended up pleading guilty to second-degree murder plus another charge for giving cocaine to his son. He was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 27 years. He's also barred from ever having contact with his son. During his sentencing, Robert said, quote, "I understand why I'm being prosecuted here. I understand the reasons why everyone looks at me as a monster. I couldn't have said it better myself." Stranger abductions of children are rare, but it happens, and when it does, the community quickly comes together to try and bring the child home safely. Unfortunately, there isn't always a positive outcome, and that was the case on October 12, 2019, when 3-year-old Camille McKinney, who went by Cupcake, was lured away from a birthday party in Birmingham, Alabama, and abducted. Once it was realized that she was missing, her parents made a desperate plea for their daughter to be found, and the community went to work searching. Police received multiple tips that a man had been out in the area handing out candy, and one of the witnesses saw a young girl crying in the back of the man's SUV as he drove away from the area. That man was identified as 39-year-old Patrick Stallworth, and when he was interviewed, he denied any knowledge of a missing child. Despite that, the day after Cupcake's disappearance, he and his girlfriend, 32-year-old Arisha Brown, were arrested after surveillance footage showed Patrick at a convenience store near where Cupcake was kidnapped purchasing candy. After his arrest, child sexual assault material was discovered on Patrick's cell phone. It wasn't until 10 days after the abduction that Cupcake's body was found in a dumpster that had been at the apartment complex where Patrick and Derek lived and had since been taken to a garbage transfer station. The autopsy revealed that Cupcake had methamphetamines and sedatives in her system. Her cause of death was ruled as asphyxiation. Eventually, Patrick changed his story and said he had come home and found Cupcake there with Derek, but he didn't know how she had gotten there. That did not match the evidence that showed he had purchased candy and that people had witnessed him lure children, eventually driving away from the area with a crying child in his vehicle. Derek already had a record for kidnapping involving her own children. Patrick Stallworth and Arisha Brown were charged with kidnapping and capital murder, and both were found guilty on all counts. They were both sentenced to 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole. It's most common for a child to be murdered by an adult, but sometimes the child killer is a child killer. That was the case on February 4, 2007 in Abilene, Texas, when 13-year-old Paris Bennett decided to kill his 4-year-old sister, Ella Bennett. Paris came from a fairly dysfunctional background, with his maternal grandmother having been tried for the murder of her husband, Paris's maternal grandfather. Though she was acquitted of the crime, her daughter, Paris's mother, Charity Bennett, always believed she was guilty. That led to mental health issues that Charity tried to relieve with drugs, but she eventually cleaned herself up and had children of her own. She had her son Paris in 1993 and then her daughter Ella in 2002. At some point, Charity relapsed, and it seemed that Paris resented the fact that his mother was using drugs even though she was able to get clean once again. On the evening of February 4, 2007, Charity was working a late shift at Buffalo Wild Wings due to it being Super Bowl Sunday, and she had a babysitter at home watching the children. Paris convinced the babysitter that his mother said she could leave, and she did. That's when he went into his sister's room, sexually assaulted her, and then stabbed her 17 times. Then he called 911 and confessed to the killing. During the call, the dispatcher gave him instructions on how to do CPR, and Paris pretended he was doing it, but it was later discovered that he hadn't. During the investigation, they found that Paris had searched for snuff films online between the time the babysitter left and when he killed Ella. Paris first told investigators that he went into Ella's room to check on her, but then he hallucinated that his sister had turned into a demon. Eventually, he admitted that he had killed Ella to punish his mother for having relapsed. Paris Bennett was tried as a juvenile, as the minimum age a person can be tried as an adult in Texas is 14. He pleaded guilty to capital murder and was sentenced to 40 years in prison with parole eligibility after 20 years. You can learn more about the case from the 2017 documentary, The Family I Had. In the documentary at the time, Charity was still dedicated to remaining in contact with her son, but she chose to cut off contact in 2021 after Paris continued to show signs that he was still a danger to society. Unfortunately, a child is most likely to be killed by a family member, usually a parent or step-parent. In the U.S., parents and step-parents are responsible for 61% of murders of children under the age of 5. Fortunately, the rate of filicide is going down with the overall crime rate in the U.S., but every year we still see too many parents snap and decide that their children need to die. That happened suddenly in Shreveport, Louisiana on April 19, 2026, just 2 weeks ago. What police said started as a domestic dispute erupted in violence when 31-year-old Shamar Elkin shot a woman who was identified as his girlfriend. Then he fled that home and traveled to his own house, which he shared with his wife and a number of children, where he started shooting everyone there. Most of the victims were his own children. His wife and one child escaped by jumping off the roof of the house and they called 911. Shamar left his house and carjacked a person at gunpoint before being chased by officers. After a short chase, officers ended up shooting and killing Shamar in an area neighborhood. He had managed to hit his wife with one of the shots before she escaped, and she and the child who escaped were treated for their injuries. The girlfriend was also treated for her gunshot wound. The children who were killed were 11-year-old Soraya Snow, 10-year-old Marcaden Pugh, 7-year-old Layla Pugh, 6-year-old Kadarian Snow, 6-year-old Kayla Pugh, 5-year-old Braylon Snow, 5-year-old Shayla Elkins, and 3-year-old Jayla Elkins. Shamar had served in the U.S. Army National Guard from 2013 to 2020 but had never been deployed. Neighbors said that they had waved and said hello to him just the day before, and they were shocked at the news that he had murdered his children and was killed by police. It was discovered that he was in the process of divorcing his wife and was scheduled to appear in court the following day, but if that had anything to do with the murders is unclear. He had also called his mother and stepfather in early April and said that he was depressed and having thoughts of suicide. Now that he's dead, his motives will never truly be known, and yet another case of filicide will go down in the history books with more questions than answers. Why does someone choose to end the life of an innocent child? It's hard to say. It could be mental illness, or it could be selfishness, or jealousy, or it could be pure evil. It's been studied extensively, and it seems that we're no closer to finding out the cause of child murder or how to completely prevent it. The best we can do is continue to raise awareness and try to offer help to those we see are suffering. Look for the signs of mental illness and remain vigilant about who your children are around. Hopefully one day we can live in a world where child murder is not a reality. Thanks for watching This Is Monsters. New episodes are uploaded twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays. There are occasional bonus episodes covering unsolved cases and criminal history. If you have a suggestion for a case you think I should cover, leave it in the comments. You can always follow the channel on Instagram at thisis_monsters and purchase merch at thisismonsters.com. Thanks so much, and be safe.